Remember, big changes in your lifetime. I mean, things that really shook things up, like maybe the fall of the Berlin Wall. Well, now imagine something even bigger,
Oh, yeah.
like completely abolishing the monarchy in England.
Wow.
It happened in the 1650s.
Really a time of upheaval?
Totally. It's hard to even wrap your head around it.
For sure.
So we're doing a deep dive today into this revolutionary decade. We'll be looking at not just the Tudors podcast episode.
Oh, interesting.
It features Professor Alice Hunt.
I know her work.
She wrote the book Republic, Britain's Revolutionary Decade, 1649-1660. You gave me that as source material.
Yes.
And she really has some fascinating insights.
A great resource for this period.
Okay, so where do we even begin with this story? What kicks off this crazy decade?
Well, the podcast episode starts us off right in the thick of it, December 6th, 1648.
Okay.
It's called Pride's Purge. Picture this. Armed soldiers blocking Parliament.
Oh.
They're straight up barring certain MPs from even getting in. A total power grab, but, it came from all this tension, political and religious brewing at the time.
Hold on. Why were only certain MPs targeted? What was the end game here?
So the English Civil War had just wrapped up,
Right.
and nobody could agree what to do with King Charles I.
She was captured, right?
Yep. Some folks in Parliament wanted to, negotiate,
So,
maybe dial back the monarchy a bit, but others, mostly the army guys, they wanted more.
more radical.
Yeah, they saw Charles as a tyrant, had to go, and they were ready to use force to make it happen.
So Pride's Purge was basically a way to shut down the moderates and put the king on trial.
Bingo. The MPs they kept out were the ones most likely to want to work things out with the king. So by getting rid of them, the army basically rigged the whole thing, pushed for a trial, and, well, you know what happened to Charles.
But it's pretty mind-blowing.
You-
Executing a king, it seems unimaginable, especially back then, with the whole divine right of kings thing.
Totally radical. Sent shock waves through Europe. And Professor Hunt really digs into how they justified this crazy move.
I'm listening. Well, what was their reasoning? How did they convince people this was the right thing to do?
They argued that Charles had broken his own promises.
This coronation oath.
Yep. By waging war on his own people, they said he failed to protect their liberties.
Interesting.
And actually became a danger to England. So basically, he broke the deal between king and subjects, no longer fit to rule.
That's a pretty strong argument. It kind of redefines what it means to be a monarch, doesn't it?
It does.
Not just about God-given right, but about taking care of your people.
Right on. And that change in thinking was crucial for what came next.
Yeah.
The Commonwealth.
A free state, no king. So no more monarchy, the king executed. What did this new world actually look like?
Oh, they got busy fast. Huge changes, abolished the House of Lords, sold off all the royal stuff.
Palaces and all that.
Everything. Even melted down the crown jewels.
Wow.
It was a clean break with the past. Plus, they needed the cash after years of war.
What a fire sale. It must have been a whirlwind for the average person.
Oh yeah, total change. But here's the ironic part.
What's that?
One of the first things this new Commonwealth did was pass a treason law,
A treason law.
almost identical to one used by Henry VII, a king.
So they dismantle the monarchy, but then bring in laws that sound pretty, monarchical.
Exactly. Makes you think about power and revolutions, right? Are they just swapping one form of control for another? Was it really a new beginning or just moving the pieces around?
Really makes you think. It's like, can you ever really escape what came before? And I'm guessing not everyone was happy with these changes, even within the Commonwealth.
Right on the money. There were huge disagreements about how far to go with the revolution.
Right.
Groups like the Levelers, led by John Lilburne,
I've heard of them.
they wanted even more change. Wider voting rights, regular elections, less government power. They saw the revolution as a chance to make a truly fair society.
So even within this movement for change, some felt it wasn't enough, not living up to the ideals. It really shows how complex revolutions are, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The internal struggles.
Totally. And all this is happening while a powerful and controversial figure is rising to prominence. Oliver Cromwell.
Ah, Cromwell.
Yeah.
Infamous for his brutality in Ireland, the massacres at Drogheda and Wexford.
Yeah, a dark side to his story, no doubt. But Professor Hunt, she says we need to look deeper. She mentions a letter he wrote to his daughter-in-law after she had a miscarriage. It's full of tenderness.
Really?
Shows a side of him that's often forgotten.
So how do we reconcile those two sides? Ruthless, military leader, A&D, compassionate family man.
Professor Hunt suggests looking at the times. Back then, anti-Irish and anti-Catholic feelings were everywhere. Cromwell thought he was doing God's work, wiping out what he saw as wrong. His actions in Ireland, though horrible, a lot of people in England thought they were necessary, even right.
It shows how history is rarely black and white. We're all shaped by our times, even beliefs and prejudices we might find awful today.
For sure. And speaking of tough choices, by 1650, the anniversary of Charles I's execution, many of those involved were having second thoughts.
The reality sinking in.
Maybe. Guys like Thomas Fairfax, he'd been commander-in-chief of the army, and MP Thomas Hoyle, they started expressing doubts.
Interesting.
They were torn because the Republic wasn't what they thought it would be, not what they fought for in the Civil War.
Back again for more of England's Republic. Last time things ended with Cromwell kicking out Parliament. Kind of a dramatic exit. So with no Parliament, what happens?
Well, it's 1653, no king, no Parliament. England's in limbo.
Total power vacuum.
And Cromwell steps right in.
Yeah.
Sets up the Protectorate, with himself as Lord Protector.
So not a king by name, but with all the power. That seems kind of at odds with the whole Republic thing.
Definitely raised some eyebrows. Still debated by historians today. He basically ruled by decree.
Okay.
Had his own council, tons of authority. But it wasn't a total return to, like, absolute rule. He did some surprisingly progressive things, too.
Like,
Well, he let Jewish people back into England. They'd been banned for centuries.
wow, that's a big deal. Especially with all the religious tension back then.
It was. Shows how complex Cromwell was about religious freedom. He was all about liberty of conscience for Protestants,
Okay.
even those who didn't follow the main church. Catholics, though, not so much. They were still left out.
So, a step forward, but still limited by the prejudices of the time. How did this shift to the Protectorate affect people's everyday lives?
It was kind of a mix of stability and strictness. Cromwell wanted to enforce his idea of morality.
Okay.
He cracked down on anything he saw as ungodly or just frivolous. Gambling, theater, even Christmas.
He banned Christmas.
Yeah.
Seriously. That seems a bit much, even for back then.
He wanted to purify society, back to true Christian values. Christmas was too pagan, too much partying. He wanted to be about religion only.
I bet that went over well.
Not everyone was thrilled, to say the least. People found ways to celebrate in secret, of course. But yeah, it shows how complicated Cromwell was. Led brutal wars, but also pushed for religious tolerance for some and helped the poor.
A man of contradictions. Hard to judge his legacy. Ruthless general, but also a reformer. What did the rest of Europe think about him and the Protectorate?
It was mixed. Some, like Cardinal Mazarin in France, they saw a chance to team up with England against their common enemy, Spain.
Right.
But others were suspicious, not sure what Cromwell was up to, whether he'd last.
I mean, England had been pretty chaotic, not exactly a beacon of stability. Were there people within England who tried to challenge Cromwell?
Oh, tons. Lots of royalists still around. They plotted and rebelled throughout his rule, but none of them managed to kick him out.
So, enemies at home and abroad. But it sounds like the Protectorate still achieved some things internationally. Any examples?
Well, there's the Western Design in 1655, a big military expedition to grab some Spanish colonies in the Caribbean.
A Caribbean. That sounds interesting.
The goal was to weaken Spain and get more colonies for England. And they did capture Jamaica, which became a very important English colony.
So, a win for Cromwell. Was it a total success?
Not really. Jamaica was great, but the whole campaign had a lot of problems.
Rough.
Lots of English soldiers died from disease or just bad planning.
A reminder that things don't always go as planned. But back in England, there was a big political crisis in 1657, right? What was that about?
Things get really wild here. Parliament, trying to make things more stable and make Cromwell's rule official, offered him the crown.
Wait, they offered him the crown? The very thing he'd helped get rid of. What were they thinking?
It was a risky move. Some thought that bringing back the monarchy, even with Cromwell as king, would settle things down.
Okay.
They said a monarchy was more traditional, people would accept it better.
So what did Cromwell do? Did he take it?
He was torn. I mean, think about it. Years spent fighting the monarchy, and now they're offering him the top spot.
Yeah, it would seem like going against everything he stood for.
Right. Plus, he already basically had kingly power as Lord Protector. But in the end, after lots of agonizing and praying, he said no.
He turned it down. Wow.
He said God told him it was wrong. He believed God made him leader, not some fancy title.
So, a matter of principle.
Seems like it was a real conviction for him. But some historians think he was being clever.
How so?
Maybe refusing the crown made him stronger. It calmed down the people who thought he was too ambitious.
Interesting. So, still Lord Protector. But I'm guessing his hold on power wasn't as strong anymore.
Yeah, ruling a divided country was tough. And then, just 2 years later in 1658, Cromwell gets sick and dies.
So, not even 10 years as protector. What happened after he died? Was there a smooth transition?
Cromwell tried to make it a family business. He named his son Richard as his heir.
Yeah.
But Richard wasn't like his dad. Not charismatic, not a good politician. He couldn't control all the different factions. Gave up after a few months.
The protectorate fell apart without Cromwell. What then?
Well, no clear leader, country still divided, and more people wanted the monarchy back.
Makes sense.
So in 1660, just 11 years after they executed Charles I, his son, Charles II, gets invited back to be king.
Wow, what a turnaround. After all that fighting and chaos, the monarchy's back. Did things just go back to how they were before the revolution?
Not exactly. The Restoration wasn't a reset button. What happened in the 1650s changed England forever. The whole political scene was different. It made people ask some big questions about power, who's in charge, and what role people have in government.
We're back, wrapping up England's republic. It's been quite a journey. King executed, republic declared, Cromwell's rise and fall, and now the monarchy's back. What a time to be alive.
Totally. Profound change and uncertainty. England was really tested. But even with all the chaos, there were glimmers of hope, new ideas.
So let's dig into this restoration. Charles II gets invited back, but after more than 10 years of a republic. How does that even work? Did he just waltz back into London and pick up where his dad left off?
Not exactly. It was more complicated than that. Don't forget, after Cromwell died, the protectorate lost its grip. People were tired. Tired of the instability, the strict rules. They wanted things to go back to normal. And the monarchy, for all its problems, was familiar. It meant continuity.
A bit of nostalgia for a more stable past, even if that past wasn't perfect.
Exactly. And the people who wanted the monarchy back, they used that longing for stability to their advantage. General George Monk, a big player in the army, he was key.
Okay.
Marched his troops from Scotland right into London, basically took control, paved the way for Charles II's return.
So he was like the kingmaker, reading the room, seeing the change coming, and backing the right horse.
Yeah, you could say that. Monk was a smart guy. He saw the Republic was losing support and got behind Charles II. His backing was crucial for a smooth handover of power.
It's amazing how one person can change the course of history. So Charles II shows up, gets off the boat, everyone's cheering, happy ending.
Oh, if only. The Restoration wasn't just about erasing the past and pretending nothing happened. England was still divided. There were wounds to heal. Charles II, though, unlike his father, he was a savvy politician.
Okay.
He knew he had to be careful not to start another civil war.
Smart move. So how did he handle things?
Reconciliation and pragmatism. He pardoned a lot of the people who fought against his dad, let bygones be bygones, and he made it clear he got it. The king couldn't just do whatever he wanted. He promised to uphold people's rights and liberties.
A bit of forgive and forget, but also acknowledging that the monarchy had to change. Did it work? Did things settle down?
Mostly, yes. The Restoration did bring some peace and stability, but the Revolution left its mark. What happened in the 1650s, it changed how the monarchy and parliament interacted forever.
In what way?
Yeah.
How did the Republic reshape English politics?
The biggest change was that the monarchy had limits now. The idea that a king ruled by God's grace and could ignore parliament and the law, finish.
Right.
Parliament's power grew, and the king now had to work with them, respect their authority and the rights of the people.
So even though the monarchy was back, it wasn't the same monarchy. Things had shifted.
Exactly. The ideas from the Republic about the people's power and limited government, those ideas stuck around. You could say the Revolution, even though it didn't get rid of the monarchy for good, it did pave the way for a more balanced system, one where the people had a say.
Wow, it's amazing to think that such a turbulent time could lead to lasting change. It just shows the power of ideas. Even revolutions that seem to fail can change the course of history.
Absolutely. The 1650s remind us that history isn't a straight line. It's full of twists and turns, surprises and setbacks, and what looks like a failure can actually plant the seeds for progress down the line.
Makes you wonder, what if things had been different? What if Cromwell had become king? What if Charles II hadn't played his cards right during the Restoration?
Great questions. That's why studying history is so important. It's not just about dates and names, it's about understanding the choices people made and how those choices sometimes have totally unexpected results.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And with that, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into England's republic. We've only skimmed the surface of this complex and fascinating period, but hopefully we've given you a glimpse of the drama, the intrigue, and the impact of this era.
It's a time that still captivates and challenges us. Makes us think about power, limits on authority, and that constant dance between tradition and change.
If you're hungry for more, I highly recommend Professor Alice Hunt's book, Republic, Britain's Revolutionary Decade, 1649–1660. It's a fantastic read that will totally change how you see this period of English history.
And don't forget to subscribe to The Deep Dive for more fascinating explorations into the past. We'll be back soon with another deep dive to uncover more history and see how it connects to us today.